I found a strange entity in the woods many years ago. Written by RemarkableNatural. Many times I've been asked to share my story by curious travelers and investigators of the paranormal, the transmundane, and many times I have told it. Even at my age, when the years melt together and the memory fades, I can still recall every detail of the happenings that occurred during that time. I have opted to put it into writing, so that the inquisitive among you may read it and understand it. I recall now a strange experience in my life, stranger than you could possibly imagine. It was many years ago, when I was a young man on a journey of self-discovery, seeking some sort of new truth that had previously been overlooked or forgotten by the world. My journey began in San Francisco, where I had lived for a time, and it took me across the contiguous United States and Canada. After many weeks of traveling by foot and by bus and by train, I found myself in a peculiar town by the name of Cold Harbor. Only accessible by bus, the town was small and hardly worth mentioning, save for the eccentric mannerisms of its inhabitants. With some exceptions, all deliberately avoided any and all interaction with me. I know now the reason for this behavior, but at the time, it perplexed me. I made the decision to check into a small inn, seeing as it was nightfall and that the dreary clouds that hung overhead signaled an imminent rain. At this establishment was where I first heard the rumors about it. Something which lay within the confines of the nearby forest after it fell from the heavens. Whatever it was, it sent the imaginative parts of my mind ablaze with vivid visions of alien colors and other things not of this world. "What's this thing that he's talking about, out in the woods?" I asked the proprietor of the inn, over a glass of cold beer, referring to another customer who spoke to me of such things. He paused while wiping the counter at which I sat, and an odd look crossed his face. His voice dropped low, and a darkness crept into it that I had never heard before or since, save for my recollection of its tone. "There are queer things in the forest, or so I hear. Things that no man should dare to see, just northwest of here. You're better off staying away from the trees, especially after dark," he said to me, his gaze locked to mine. After a pause, he resumed cleaning as if he had not just spoken as he had. Though his words were meant to dissuade me from going out into the forest, they only fanned the flames of my interest. So out into the forest I went the next morning, with my compass and other belongings, as I intended to move on to the next town after checking out whatever it was that lay in the forest. I headed northwest of the inn, as the innkeeper had said, traversing a dirt hiking path for several miles up and then down the mountain. Eventually I came to the end of the trail by midday, and I continued on, off the trail, navigating the wilds with only my gear and my wits to guide me. By the afternoon, I began to notice some peculiarities in the flora of the mountains that seemed to defy my comprehension. Strange repetitions of the patterns began to emerge in the vines and brush I stepped over and through to navigate, and the air of the forest became bone-chillingly still, with not a sound of the wind, as though the forest were holding its breath. I began to question my own judgment when I found it. In the clearing, I saw something beyond words, something that can only be described and understood by analogy or metaphor. It stood, or rather floated, in the center of the clearing. its crystalline, prismatic shape shimmering softly in the evening light. It bent and fell into itself recursively, its patterns flipping and repeating endlessly, and I felt the sense that I had encountered something truly not of this world. This entity is obviously of alien origin, I thought to myself. As I approached it, I felt a curious tingling in my body unlike any I had felt before, and a pressure behind my eyes that built with every step and every breath. The closer I got to the entity, the greater both sensations became. Even as the tingling and pressure became pain, as my body felt like it was being engulfed in flames, it beckoned me closer. I began to move forward, almost in a trance or on impulse, growing ever so closer and closer until I stood in front of the entity and stared into its abyss. The pain stopped, as though a switch had been flipped off, and I was left to stare with nothing to obstruct my gaze as I looked deeper into it. I gazed into infinity and I saw nothing. At least nothing that I could understand. I saw the cryptic vestige of what lay beyond Earth, what lay beyond what the human mind could grasp. A message from higher beings that the fathomless darkness of the cosmic abyss held in its deepest depths. It was as if I was engulfed in a conversation with a man who did not speak my language. At some point in the night, I must have lost consciousness, for I woke up in the clearing the next morning to find that the entity had disappeared entirely, save for a divot in the ground where it had stood. Shaken, I gathered myself and my things and I began to hike back into Cold Harbor, where I managed to catch the first bus out of town. Most that I told the story to didn't believe me. They rolled their eyes in incredulity and told me that I should consider being a writer of science fiction, insisting that I had just had a fantastical dream that night. Some suggested that I be institutionalized, having obviously gone insane after spending so long on the road and away from home. Others believed my story, but they were the types to believe in little green men in flying saucers, and so I humored their requests. I doubt very much the claims of it being a dream or a hallucination, as I know my own mind. I still understand very little of what I saw, but I do know this. Something terrifying came to that forest, and something still persists there. I should hope that nothing negative happens to me. My exposure to the entity was prolonged, and the consequences of that exposure are still unclear all these years later. One last word of caution. Stay away from the forest northwest of Cold Harbor, should you choose to visit it. I would hate for your nightmares to be plagued by the same madness that plagues mine.